A Match Made in the Mausoleum.
Presented by Still a Frog.
Celia just turned 40. Her party consisted mainly of tequila shots. No one else was there, unless you count the 18-year-old who delivered guacamole and chips from Gringos and Good Times. By shot number 6, she was dialing Gringos, asking for Casey, the dashing delivery boy. She did so until issued an ultimatum: stop or be banned for life. Elliot is 43. He's also a pathological liar, but Celia doesn't know that yet. Celia and Elliot are about to experience an anomalous encounter. Okay, perhaps not so anomalous. In fact, it may very well be the standard as far as 40-somethings with unrealistically high expectations, rampant insecurities, and total inability to learn from past dating debacles. So let's call Celia and Elliot a rather entertaining case study in the did that really just happen mating habits of a certain generation. Prepare to enter the Still a Frog zone.
Celia visited her grandmother's resting place in the mausoleum at least once a month. Her grandmother had raised her, Catherine Schiller, age 84, loving wife, mother, and grandmother, the marble placard read, directly adjacent to that of Michael Schiller, 62, taken too soon. Celia's grandmother told stories, half-stories, the equivalent of movie trailer teasers. There was this one time your Grandpa Mike and I drove to California. Can you imagine? Halfway there, somewhere in Arkansas, I think, we met this band of gypsies, is what your grandfather called them. They asked for a ride. About 5 hours in, they said they needed to make a quick stop so to get money from their bank. We did not think that they meant at gunpoint. I swear on the Bible they robbed a bank. End of story. Celia could distinctly hear the movie trailer guy's voice. Will the unsuspecting couple aid and abet this band of marauders? In theaters now. And no amount of pleading could ever get her grandma to finish one of those stories. Celia supposed that it was her grandmother's thing. Leave 'em wanting more. The mysterious woman is always far more interesting than the open book. Ah, Grandma, she wistfully sighed. I wish I could hear one of your quirky half-stories now. She reached out and was struck by the cold lifelessness of the marble. Sorry, I don't mean to intrude. A man's voice broke through the silent solemnity. I'm just putting this beneath my grandfather's stone. The man wasn't unattractive, tall and slender, but still muscular with friendly eyes. Dear God, Celia, you're visiting your dead grandmother in a mausoleum on a Tuesday. Noticing this man wasn't wrong necessarily. It was just that, well, Celia was big on context. An orchid. Elegant touch, she thought. He sat down on the bench next to hers. My grandfather was an amateur horticulturalist, he smiled. I feel that I have to up my game when bringing him something, though admittedly I haven't done that in some time. I know, I'm a terrible person. And just like that, Celia found herself in a real-life conversation with a real-live person in her grandmother's mausoleum, of all places. Elliot, that was his name. He was a photographer, weddings mostly. I like to do street photography too, but that's just my guilty pleasure. Celia told Elliot about her grandmother. He told her about his grandfather and offhandedly commented, one day we can say to our kids, yeah, Mom and Dad fell in love over dead grandparent stories. It was funny, Celia thought, despite the context. Elliot's cheeks reddened. Hers did too. They talked for over an hour. She gave him her number. A match made in the mausoleum, he smirked with boyish charm. Something like that, she coyly replied. Movie trailer voice. Will these two strangers find love with a little help from beyond? Stay tuned. 3 nights in a row they spent together. Dinner, a moonlight walk, a sunset picnic. It was all just so perfect, picturesque, like one of her grandmother's dramatic tales. And she told him so. My grandma had this way with stories. She didn't tell you how they ended. No matter how much you begged, she'd leave you hanging. I guess you were supposed to imagine the rest? I miss her, Celia said. I miss our afternoon teas. I miss her sauce on Sundays, every single Sunday without fail. Italian? Yep, maiden name Romano, she answered. Catherine Romano? Elliot looked puzzled. Wait, seriously, your grandmother's name was Catherine Romano, and she lived in Philly? Yes. Really? Yeah, really, why? Elliot stood and began to pace. Others in the restaurant were starting to stare. It couldn't be. No, but it has to. I just can't believe, he was talking to himself now. Of all the women, maybe you should sit, Celia whispered loudly. What's wrong? He took a deep breath, then Elliot told his story. So you're saying that you think my grandmother and your grandfather might have... But I don't remember her mentioning it, David. Are you sure? What was his last name? Babcock. David Babcock, originally from Poughkeepsie, moved to Philly. Contrary to my mother's version of things, the great love of his life was not my grandmother. She was more of a shotgun affair. It was Catherine, the elusive, mysterious Catherine. 3 short years is all they had together. Catherine Romano, Celia repeated, dumbstruck. Yes, that was her name. I found letters when I was a teenager. He yelled at me for snooping, but at the same time, he almost seemed relieved that someone else knew her name. Finally. That's when he started telling me about her. I asked once why they didn't end up together. All he said was that there's this country song that has the line, "You came along one promise too late." Can you imagine? Me meeting you, their graves less than 2 feet apart, his grandson, her granddaughter. It's kismet. Elliot took her hand. His face flushed. I don't know what to say. When? The letters I found were dated between 1970 and 1972. No, that's impossible. My grandparents were married in 1968. That's probably why she used her maiden name and why he said, "One promise too late." So my grandma had a past, she asked, incredulous. She had auburn hair, right? He said that she painted. In fact, they were on the beach one afternoon. She painted him, lying in the sand, the sunset behind him. I buried him with that picture. So, a stranger had known Catherine as well as she had, maybe better than her grandfather had. And then, here, sitting across from her, of all the men she could have, of all the encounters, her mind whirled. Her grandmother had always said to her, serendipity often has us on a fool's errand, but oh, it can be a wonderful one. Serendipity. Seal, what are you thinking? He rubbed the top of her arm. Say something. I think I love you. They spent the next 2 weeks inseparable. They even went to the Mausoleum together. The more Elliot told her about the romance of David Babcock and Catherine Romano, the more she wanted to hear. To experience love like that and ultimately walk away. But there was her own grandfather. What Celia remembered about him, he'd been a gentle man who smoked a pipe and liked to perform card tricks. She recalled that he could always make her laugh. David Babcock, though, had apparently been the stuff of epic romance novels. They left a rose between the headstones with a note that read simply, "From us." She stayed at his place that night. The intimacy had never been quite so intense for her. Long after making love, they just lay side by side, staring into one another's eyes. She could have sworn she saw the impassioned silhouettes of Catherine and David in his. A Bronte novel, minus the windswept heath. He fell asleep, but Celia couldn't. She just kept thanking her grandmother over and over for, well, all of it. Life and the free-spirited willingness to follow her heart. Celia wandered into the living room. Reading always made her drowsy at night. She scanned Elliot's shelves. There was certainly no shortage of sleep-inducing reading material. Understanding the swirls and whirls of fingerprints, or even better, first-hand accounts from bird watchers in Montana. Sauntering over to his desk, she stumbled upon a few even more oh-so-stimulating titles, and also a notebook. Context being Celia's thing and all, she normally would not have opened, much less read what he'd written. But this was a dreamlike state she was in, a blissful experiment in allowing serendipity to lead the way. It contained a series of short notes. Catherine's hobbies: golf, painting, and cooking. Daughter, Grace, born 11/5. Attended Bryn Mawr. There was more. Pages more. It only took a couple of lines, however, to realize these were notes about her Catherine, her grandmother. "What the fuck is this?" she screamed as she threw the notebook at him. Okay, just let me explain, please. I'm not a serial killer or anything, I promise." "Well, hell, I hadn't even gotten to serial killer, but thanks so much for clearing that up. I saw you there at the mausoleum, and I was just so struck by you and how sad you seemed all alone there. I did some Googling. I learned about your grandmother, and, well, I figured I'd have a better chance with you if you thought we had some sort of serendipitous connection. I know it sounds stupid, and I wanted to what? Use my dead grandma to try and get me into bed? So wait a minute, you made up a story about my grandmother and your grandfather." "Well, not exactly." "What do you mean not? Oh my God, he's not even your grandfather, is he? He's just an old guy who happened to be planted next to my grandmother. That's it, isn't it? Oh my God, this is even worse than I thought. How could you? Don't you see? It doesn't matter how we met, just that we did, and we're perfect for one another. And we work so well." "Are you fucking kidding me right now? I can't believe this. I can't imagine someone would—" Celia was pacing, trying to catch her breath. "Just curious," she began again. "Was there any particular reason you had to make my grandma a philandering slut?" No, don't say anything else, please." Celia threw her clothes on, in no particular order. Elliot remained seated, afraid to move. "Actually, wait, I do have one more question." Celia paused in her frenzy to get the hell out of there. "If that wasn't your grandfather, why were you in the mausoleum to begin with?" "Well, I was, he stammered. "Jesus Christ, this is what you do, isn't it? I am such a complete idiot. I actually fell for... This is your thing, right? Stalking women in mausoleums and then... Oh my God. Oh my God." She began to laugh, her rage and humiliation now supplanted by a hysterical, macabre-like nihilism. "Please, I don't want to lose you." "Lose me? You've got to be kidding me." It was the weekend. She'd returned to her old friend Jose Cuervo. Gringos in Good Times had apparently forgiven her drunken dials, and she awaited her south-of-the-border sampler. She answered the door, half-dressed, half-smashed, and wholly heartbroken. "I have your order," a handsome stranger said. "Gringos in Good Times?" he explained, thinking she needed some clarification. "You're the one who kept calling a couple of weeks ago, right? Asking to speak to my son?" He smiled. "Please forgive my silliness," she said. Silliness sounded so much better than drunkenness, so much more Scarlett O'Hara with her velvety southern savoir-faire. She handed him a 10. "Here you go." "Oh, no, it's okay. I'm the owner. Marco," he offered. "Oh, really?" she grinned. Serendipity.